Hello and welcome to the Cardiac Cats YouTube channel. I'm your host, Jacob Shorba, and today we're going to be breaking down the huge news that we just received for myself just a few minutes ago, and for you guys, probably a little longer. But really big news coming out of Chicago. They were talking about the first overall pick being traded as soon as the upcoming week, and sure enough, here we go. We know that now, after all this speculation, the Carolina Panthers will be making the first selection in the NFL draft. Really big news, extremely important, and good news as well for Jacksonville. And here's the reason why. We did not want a team in the AFC South having first selection out of all the quarterbacks. That is the last thing we wanted. Because there's quarterbacks in this class who could be elite, and quarterbacks that could, quite frankly, flip the AFC South and make it competitive all of a sudden. I still think Jacksonville is the best team. I think they will be going into this next season regardless of really what happens this offseason. But at the same time, I don't want it to be competitive, right? None of us do. And so Carolina landing the first pick is really important because it's going to take that top prospect off the board. And so as far as what they offered for this pick, gave up a whole lot. That's not super important to us, but just for the sake of details, they gave up their 9th selection, their late second rounder, a first round selection next year, a 2025 second round selection, and the crazy part of this, wide receiver DJ Moore. A guy that I believe they just re-signed, actually. Young receiver, talented receiver. Definitely a good move for Chicago. They get a lot of draft capital, good amount, and they get a franchise piece for that team. They have a ton of cap space, really not a concern for them. So, big move there. I think good for both teams. I wouldn't have wanted to give up, my star receiver if I was Carolina, but if you got to do that to get your guy, then you go get your guy. So, with that said, we're going to talk about what we should be rooting for in this draft. And there's going to be differences on what exactly or who exactly we think are the best prospects in this draft, because there's really 4 guys. You could argue any single one of them could be the best, although I think the Will Levis argument is probably not as often heard. People are kind of lower on him in general, but he could still arguably be the best quarterback in this class. And so you've got a few guys here. We'll talk about them for a moment. But you've got Bryce Young. Young is a really talented player, one of the best prospects we've seen come out in recent years. Not better than Lawrence or Burrow, I would say, but really good prospect. Someone who could flip a franchise completely. The problem is his size. The guy just, quite frankly, does not have ideal size. And actually, I'm pretty sure he's shorter than Kyler Murray. So it's not good for him. That's definitely not good. But he is a talented player. He's a playmaker. He's a clutch guy. He's someone you still want to bring into your franchise that you really should consider an outlier. And then you've got 3 other guys. Now, a lot of people will put CJ Stroud second. I put Anthony Richardson second. And I think you could go really any way. But with Richardson, he's a quarterback with less experience, a guy that is extremely talented, that's also had a ton of awful film, just a really raw athlete. And ultimately, with his size, all these tools that he has that are just ridiculous, if he hits in the NFL, if he becomes everything that a team wants him to be, this is a guy who could be a top 5 quarterback easily. Has the tools for that. He could go win multiple Super Bowls for his team. Very talented player, and someone that someone's going to take a shot on early in the draft. He's going to be off the board well before Jacksonville picks. And then you got CJ Stroud. I think with Stroud, you've got a really solid quarterback who has great accuracy, has a lot of really nice tools. But the big thing that people went after him over was his ability to make big plays in crucial moments. He was consistently found not doing that. And in his last game in college, he was really close to finally changing that and flipping the script. And unfortunately, the team didn't make the field goal at the end of the game. And I think there would be possibly a very different argument for him at this point if, say, that Ohio State went into the championship game. It could be a very different draft right now. And then you've got Will Levis, who is more of a raw guy than most people in this. He's not as raw as Anthony Richardson, but he's got the big arm. He's kind of they've compared a lot of prospects to Josh Allen. I would compare him because he's kind of a raw athlete. He's got the big arm. He's talented. And if you hit on him, then you're getting a really good franchise quarterback. Only thing, that guy puts mayonnaise in his coffee, and that's obviously a red flag. But hey, not for the Titans. So to get into really what I want to talk about, now that we've talked about the quarterbacks, for the Jacksonville Jaguars, we need to be hoping that the teams in our division do not land quarterbacks. That is something we absolutely need to look at. And ideally, even if they do, we're hoping that they get later choice. And so we know with the first pick now, it's probably going to be one of two prospects. It could be one of three. But I think that first selection, which it's not traded on here, so I'll go ahead and trade it. And I just want to use this to kind of show you guys what we're talking about. We'll just do that, even though there's more compensation. This first pick is probably Bryce Young or Anthony Richardson, because Bryce Young, he's been the unanimous top quarterback in this draft. He's the most clutch of them, but you could also see them go Anthony Richardson because they want to get that next Cam Newton. But we're going to click Bryce Young because I think that's the way the Panthers are going to go with this pick. And if it doesn't happen, hey, it's Anthony Richardson and Bryce Young's the top guy at this point. Now, there are some rumors that even if Bryce Young falls to 2, the Texans aren't huge on him. And they're talking about Houston right now going after Garoppolo in free agency and looking to pick up Will Anderson in the draft, which, as good as Will Anderson will be, I still just don't think that's right for him. But hey, they're a division rival. Like, let's let them do it, right? And so what we're hoping, we hope that Bryce Young goes off the board at 1, or Anthony Richardson, but preferably Young. We hope at this pick we get Will Anderson off the board. That way Houston doesn't land the franchise quarterback, and maybe they aren't in position to go do it in the future. You can't guarantee that. You have to be the worst team to go get the best guy. And we were lucky in Jacksonville that we were the worst team than when Trevor Lawrence came out. So, it's going to be hard for these teams to be that bad again. And so you got Houston here. You're hoping they go defense or just any other position. And then this is where it gets interesting. Because for the Cardinals, the way I see it, like, this is a team that you could almost say their next season's already done. As bad as it sounds, with Kyler Murray being injured, probably into next season, maybe even the whole year, you're in a really crappy spot. Things are just going wrong there. You've got a lot of holes on your roster. You're moving on from players. You're probably best off trading this pick. And there are going to be teams wanting to move up here. So we need to hope that someone moves up to the 3rd overall pick with Arizona that isn't the Indianapolis Colts and selects a quarterback. And I think the Colts could even just flip here. I think that's possible. Because for Indianapolis, I think now with how things have gone, that there's a good chance that Arizona ends up trading that pick. And you could have 3 quarterbacks off the board before you select. So there's a chance that Indianapolis moves up here. But what we're going to hope for, and I think will happen, because Indianapolis won't offer as much since it's literally one selection that they move up, and they're taking a prospect that Carolina is not going to have any interest in because they have Kyler Murray. I think what we're going to hope for is a team like, say, the Las Vegas Raiders or the Atlanta Falcons to move up to 3 and go get a quarterback. You could also see Tennessee move up. I mean, they're kind of in that range where they could make that move. It would be the same amount of spots as what Carolina did. Obviously, we don't want that, though. And so I think what I would like to see, and I think what would be good, is if you see the Las Vegas Raiders trade up here and take Anthony Richardson, get him off the board, keep him out of the AFC South, because this is one guy I do not want in the division. Because there's a chance he busts, yes, but if he's good, it's going to be a nightmare having to play them twice a year. I mean, and it's going to be a nightmare for them too, having to play us, right? But we don't want that in our division. We want things to be easy. I mean, we want the Kansas City kind of division where everything sucks, every team blows up, and we just waltz to a division championship. Or it's, the Chargers pretending they're competitive and then doing what they did this last year. So I think you could see a move like this where the Raiders move up and they try to get that Mahomes-like prospect. Not that there's going to be another Patrick Mahomes, but getting this guy with this ridiculous talent that if you hit on him, okay, well, now you have an answer. Like, now you can take it to Kansas City and hope to win the division. So it's possible we see the Raiders make that kind of move. And they moved on from Derek Carr to upgrade the quarterback position, upgrade it over average to good. So if you get a move like that, now you look at the board, Indianapolis has two options. They're limited on what they can do. Stroud would be solid. That's probably what we'll see from them. But I'm not as worried about Stroud. I think with him, he'll be all right. I don't think he's going to be crazy good. And Will Levis, I think he's going to bust on certain teams. And I think Indianapolis is one of those teams where we could see that happen. And you keep in mind with Stroud, too, he's played with this crazy good talent at the receiver position. What is Indianapolis going to have to offer? Nothing. They don't even have Paris Campbell. They've got Michael Pittman and Alec Pierce. And that's okay. But it's not elite or great. There's even talk about whether Jonathan Taylor stays there. I think he will, but I mean, it's not a good situation on offense, and their offensive line needs a ton of work. So putting Stroud in that kind of situation probably isn't good. So really what I wanted to get at with this is ultimately that this draft is going to be really important for the future of the division. We know that for a fact. Because if one of these teams hits on a quarterback and every single one of them has a route to go do it, then this division changes pretty quick. It goes from being, okay, it's going to be a cakewalk to we might actually have a challenger. And Jacksonville needs to have these 12-5, 13-4 seasons to make sure they wrap up the division. And so, I mean, I don't know how much I trust the other teams in the division to just go kill it in the draft, but I don't want to give them the chance. And so I think with the way things are now, this is kind of what we need to look for. We want one of these top quarterbacks, the high potential ones, which are really Bryce Young and Anthony Richardson, to go to Carolina. We want the Texans to go in on a free agent quarterback in Garoppolo, which I don't see how in the world that works with almost no offensive weapons on that team once Brandon Cooks is gone. And then you want to see a team move up to 3 and snipe a quarterback off the board. So it's good news, right? With this move with Carolina going up to number 1, we have a route to where ultimately in this division, there could be almost none of these quarterbacks going. We could see one quarterback come to this division because we know the Colts are going to select one for sure. The Titans are very much up in the air. They have to make a move. And the Texans are apparently interested in Garoppolo. So hopefully we see something like this. Maybe you don't agree with it. This is where I'm at on it. I am really excited. Also just for Carolina because they're one of the teams that, quite frankly, I'm more favorable to. Not anywhere near Jacksonville, of course, but just in terms of other teams. Them, the Vikings, guys like that. And so I'm happy for them and ultimately happy that our division ends up losing at the end of the day. So let me know what you think. Let me know if you've got any ideas on what you want to see. We're going to have more content coming out here and more things to talk about. This is one of those, but we'll have free agency starting. We'll probably, unfortunately, see some Jaguars leave the team, sign with other teams. We'll see some new players come in, which will be great. And we'll have a clear vision of what we're going to do in the draft. So, a lot's coming up. We're going to have a lot coming out. It's going to be exciting next week of football, and we've got some exciting news to kick that off. So, thank you for watching. Appreciate you taking your time here. I hope you have a great rest of your day. And finally, go Jags.